Featuring Ironman Championship competitor and polio survivor Minda Dentler, the director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Dr. Tom Frieden, and CDC Senior Medical Epidemiologist, Dr. James Alexander. Winner of television's The Voice and Rotary End Polio Now Ambassador, Tessan Chin. The General Secretary of Rotary International, John Hugo. Olivier Charmailly, CEO and President, Sanofi Pasteur. Mike McGovern, Chair of Rotary's International Polio Plus Committee. And from Time Magazine, your moderator, Jeffrey Kluger. Now, please welcome Rotary End Polio Now Ambassador, Ziggy Marley.
Hi, I'm Ziggy Marley, and welcome to the World Polio program in Chicago. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you, but we support you 100% in what you do. As an ambassador for this program, I've given music, I've given my support, my love, and I wish you guys all the best. I think it's a disease that can be taken care of very easily with more awareness and support. I think it will be done very soon. I'm here, I'm not there with you, but I'm here also to give you one of my songs to help inspire people with this song called Lighthouse that I have. It's from my new album, Fly Rasta, so I hope you enjoy it. In Polio Now, thank you for coming, guys. See you soon.
Hey sister, the emotions have gone cold, and a part of me is missing where the rivers used to flow. Hey mother, I know you must be sad to see the things are happening. I'll fix it if I can. I'm holding up the fire, lighting up the sky like a lighthouse on the ocean. I bring you home alright. I'm holding up the fire, lighting up the sky, like a lighthouse on the ocean. I bring you home alright. Hey brother, some things never change. Caesar's always Caesar. His night comes in today. Hey father, they sold you like a slave to a world that takes everything and gives nothing away. Hey, I'm holding up the fire, lighting up the sky like a lighthouse on the ocean. Bring us home alright. I'm holding up the fire, lighting up the sky, like a lighthouse from the ocean. I bring you home alright. I'm holding up the fire, us home alright. Holding up the fire, holding up the fire. I'm lighting up the sky, lighting up the sky. At the lighthouse on the ocean, I bring you home alright. I bring you home. I'm holding up the fire. Ooh, wonder.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to everyone who's here with us in Chicago and to our online viewers around the world. My name is John Huco, and I am the General Secretary of Rotary International, the organization that is hosting tonight's program, with generous support from our friends at Sanofi Pasteur. And thank you to Ziggy Marley for that very, very inspiring song. Ziggy is one of Rotary's most passionate polio eradication ambassadors, and we're grateful for all that he has done to get us to a polio-free world. Now, some of you with us tonight may be interested in global health in general, or polio eradication in particular. Perhaps you're in medical school, or a journalist. Maybe you're a physician, or a nurse. Or maybe you simply want to be a part of history and help end a disease. Whatever your background or motivation, we have a great deal of information and inspiration to share with you this evening. But some of you might still be wondering, why is Rotary hosting this? Is that the same as the Rotary Club that we have back home? Well, yes, it is the same organization you may associate with community service projects in your hometown. For more than a century, Rotary clubs have brought together business, professional, and community leaders to address local needs. But not only local needs, Rotary clubs tackle some of the world's most pressing problems as well. For example, in 1979, Rotary had the audacity to decide that the world had seen enough of polio, that incurable, disabling virus that at the time was paralyzing about 350,000 children a year in more than 120 countries. Vaccines to prevent polio had been developed more than 20 years earlier. Smallpox had just been eradicated, and Rotary figured, why not polio? So Rotary worked with health authorities to immunize children with the oral polio vaccine, first in the Philippines, then on to Brazil, Nicaragua, the Dominican Republic, and other countries. Polio rates fell quickly and dramatically. These early successes, led by Rotary, demonstrated to the world that global eradication was doable and feasible. And so in 1988, Rotary formed the Global Polio Eradication Initiative. And this is perhaps the most ambitious and effective public-private partnership ever assembled. Now, Rotary's main responsibility has been to raise money, support, and awareness, and to provide the boots on the ground. Through our network of more than 34,000 clubs and 1.2 million members in over 200 countries and regions. And since we began the fight against polio, Rotary has contributed more than $1.4 billion to polio eradication. And today, yes, $1.4 billion to polio eradication. And today, 2.5 billion immunized children later, we are this close to our goal of a polio-free world. That's right. Polio cases have fallen by more than 99% from that 350,000 a year when we began to fewer than 420 for all of 2013. Now, our program this evening will lay out how we have gotten to the doorstep of eradication and what we still have to do, the challenges we still must overcome to slam the door on polio for good. And once we do, once we wipe polio from the face of the planet, we not only will have ensured that no child will ever again be paralyzed by this terrible disease, but we will set the stage for the next major global health initiative, whatever it may be. Now, polio eradication will leave in place a vast network of healthcare and public health infrastructure that will benefit people and communities for generations to come. In fact, it's already happening. We're seeing it right now, how polio eradication assets, emergency response centers, labs, surveillance networks, help Nigerian health authorities successfully contain the deadly Ebola virus. And I should add that the Ebola outbreak, especially the way it reached the United States, simply underscores the fact that infectious diseases are always a mere plane ride away. And so by any measure, from any perspective, polio eradication will be a huge win for global health at a time when the world is sorely in need of a victory of that magnitude. And that's why Rotary is hosting this important program this evening. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mike McGovern, who chairs Rotary's International Polio Plus Committee, the body that plans our polio eradication activities and keeps us focused on our goal of a polio-free world. Mike?
Thank you, John. Thank you. Thank you, John. It's great to be here tonight. We have put together a very strong program focused on the progress of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative and what we, the world community, must do to finish the job Rotary began 3 decades ago. We'll hear from experts from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, a polio survivor with a fascinating personal story, a respected science journalist, a representative from Sanofi Pasteur, the world's largest polio vaccine producer, and a rising star in the entertainment world who has found in polio eradication a cause she can embrace. You will also learn how you can become involved in this history-making endeavor. John also mentioned that the Global Polio Eradication Initiative is one of the most successful public-private partnerships ever created. The initiative's original spearheading partners are Rotary, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the Centers for Disease Control, and of course, national governments worldwide. More recently, we have been joined by the United Nations Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Rotary and the Gates Foundation are engaged in a particularly successful fundraising collaboration that I will tell you more about later. We are very fortunate to have as our program moderator Jeff Kluger, a highly respected journalist who is very familiar with the history of polio and our current campaign to end the disease. Jeff is the editor-at-large of Time magazine, where he oversees science and technology coverage. Jeff has covered polio immunization activities in Pakistan. He has also authored numerous books, including one that is particularly relevant to tonight's program. It's entitled Splendid Solution, Jonas Salk in the Conquest of Polio. But before we turn the program over to Jeff, it's time for a lesson in determination, courage, and inspiration from a very special guest speaker whose story you won't soon forget.
My name is Minda Dentler. A couple years ago, I qualified for the Ironman World Championship. 5 years later, on my second attempt, I became the first woman wheelchair athlete to complete the Kona course. I want to share my experience living with polio with others. I just want to thank Rotary for giving me this opportunity to lend my voice to the polio eradication cause. I was born in India
to domestic worker and single mother. When I was 6 months old, I contracted polio, which left me paralyzed from the hips down. Unable to care for me, my birth mother left me at an orphanage. Now, I don't remember much of the time there because I was so young, but I know the conditions were primitive. I didn't have access to TV, books, or radio, and playing with a piece of string would entertain me for hours. I had no real hope that my life would become anything. Fortunately, I was adopted by Bruce and Ann Dentler, my amazing parents, and I joined their family of 2 children and an adopted son from Korea, and I moved to Spokane, Washington just shortly after my 3rd birthday. And over the next few years, I underwent a series of surgeries of my hips, on my legs, and my back to not only straighten myself out, but to then be able to walk with leg braces and crutches. As a child, I struggled with my disability. I had a difficult time feeling like I fit in. I rarely saw other disabled people in Spokane, and I felt awkward because people would stare at me all the time. I was embarrassed about wearing my back brace and my long leg braces, and I always hid what I called my chicken legs under my pants. And as a young girl, I thought that wearing thick, heavy leg braces on my legs did not look very pretty or feminine. My adopted family is very athletic, and I always participated from the sidelines, cheering on my 3 siblings or handing out water at local road races. Growing up without participating in sports, I think, just magnified how different my disability made me feel. But despite not being able to play in sports, I made the decision to be active in my community, volunteering at the local hospital in high school and a disability student group in college. I interned with organizations such as the White House to IBM. I studied abroad in Spain, and I backpacked through Europe by myself. Upon graduating, I moved to New York City for a job in management consulting. I pursued an MBA, got married, and now I work as a director of operations at AIG. By the time I had turned 28, I had conquered almost all the things that seemed impossible for a paralyzed orphan from India. But there was one thing missing. I was on the sidelines when it came to sports. That's when I was introduced to an organization that makes sports accessible for people with disabilities. I learned how to hand cycle, and I completed a number of marathons. I discovered triathlon 6 years ago. And after completing 10 triathlons, I finished my first Ironman in Louisville, and I qualified for the Ironman World Championship in Kona, Hawaii. Now, thank you. So if you're not familiar, the Kona Ironman is like the Super Bowl of triathlon. My first attempt at the Kona Ironman, I failed. I got pulled off the course because I was too slow. I then had to make the decision to put that failure behind me, and I came back even stronger the following year on a mission to finish the job that I had come there to do. With an incredible team behind me, hard work, and determination, I found a way to get it done. I crossed that finish line, and my final time was 14 hours and 39 minutes. In the 35-year history of the sport of Ironman, I cannot believe that I, that paralyzed, orphaned, little girl from India, became the first woman wheelchair athlete to complete the Kona course. After crossing that finish line, I was overwhelmed with joy and excitement. It was a storybook ending and the realization of a dream that seemed impossible to achieve. I realized that the journey itself was so much bigger than me. It represents my opportunity to share with the world that it is time to make polio a thing of the past. And that same determination that I had for sports has driven me to become an advocate for polio eradication. That's why I was thrilled to accept Rotary's invitation to participate in this special World Polio Day program. Now, among my generation, I am one of the very few individuals in the US that are living with paralysis by polio today. I have the humbling knowledge that had I not been adopted, I may not even be alive today. I know that I am an exception. I won the human lottery, and I got a real chance at life, and I became what all mothers in the world would want for their children, to be healthy, successful, and to have a hopeful future. Today, we are closer than ever to eliminating polio everywhere in the world. Since 1988, more than 2.5 billion children have been immunized against polio, and an estimated 5 million children who otherwise would have been paralyzed like me are walking. The mission to eradicate polio, I think, is in some ways like completing a triathlon. It takes a tremendous amount of planning and preparation, a relentless team, persistence, and the ability to overcome unexpected challenges. Looking at the size of the task, a lot of people would never try. But that is why I am here today. As a polio survivor, I want to remind you that polio is still a very real threat, especially in the poorest communities of the world. No child should have to live with paralysis, especially when the disease is completely preventable with a vaccine. We have an incredible once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change people's lives forever and to eradicate polio from the planet. We have the resolve. We are truly this close. To the people watching today's program around the world, we need your voice. We need your support in order to see it through to the finish line. We must end polio now. Thank you.
Thank you, Minda, and thank you, John, and thank you, Mike, for all that you're doing. And thanks as well to Rotary for inviting me to be a part of this evening. The war on polio has never been easy, but it's one of our great good fortunes that it has always had its Mindas. President Roosevelt was a Minda. The children at Warm Springs, Georgia, who worked and struggled and, yes, played with President Roosevelt were Mindas. Jonas Salk, Albert Sabin, and the people of the National Foundation for Infantile Paralysis, which of course later became the March of Dimes, were all Mindas. So is every small child in Pakistan or Nigeria or Afghanistan who goes to bed at night and wakes up in the morning and finds that a disease that has been eradicated in the other 193 countries in the world has claimed that child's legs, and the child must now fight or die. Finally, there are today's greatest heroes, the field workers in those endemic countries, especially Pakistan, who risk death by gunfire every time they go into the field with their life-saving Sabin drops, knocking on door after door, offering protection to the children they find there. Their work would be impossible without the support of some remarkable international groups, none greater than Rotary International. When the final page in the terrible history of the polio virus is written, when the virus is, like smallpox, confined to the supermax lockdown of the laboratory, it will be the men and women of Rotary who have been fighting this war for more than 25 years, who will be thought of as the Salks and Sabins of our century. It would always be a privilege to introduce, in that spirit, our next speaker, who comes to us via a video he recorded yesterday. He's the 16th director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a former CDC Epidemic Intelligence Service officer in New York. And you know, anytime you're an intelligence service officer in New York, that means your job is hard because the people and the viruses play for keeps there. He is a graduate of the Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons and the Mailman School of Public Health. Most important, in these days of fear and loss and misinformation about the Ebola virus, he's America's doctor. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Thomas Frieden of the CDC.
Welcome. I wish I could be with you in person, and I look forward to continuing to work together as we eradicate polio. I want to thank Rotarians around the world for your commitment and perseverance to getting us where we are today. The status of polio eradication is better than it was a year ago, while the situation in Pakistan means that we will miss the 2014 deadline. We've seen real progress in Nigeria, and we've responded effectively to importation events. If we remain focused and we execute high-quality vaccination rounds in all countries, we will finish the job. When the Southeast Asia region was certified polio-free in March, we were reminded what perseverance and country ownership can accomplish. 80% of the world's population lives in areas certified to be polio-free. Polio continues to lose ground. Next month will mark 2 full years since the last documented case of wild poliovirus type 3, giving every appearance of the eradication of this strain and leaving only type 1 left in the world. The total number of cases in the world to date this year is 222 compared to 282 for the same period last year. Outside of Pakistan, the number of cases so far has been 35 compared with 187 for the same period last year. Nigeria is in an excellent position to stop circulation of polio this year with just 6 cases reported so far as we approach the end of the high transmission season. Because of Rotary, 1,300 polio survivors, and generous support of Nigerian philanthropist Mr. Aliko Dangote, the Nigerian people and their government have reduced the number of unvaccinated children, reaching now more than 83% of high-risk local government areas with high vaccination rates. They've also established country ownership. The Polio Operations Center also allowed Nigeria to respond quickly and effectively to the Ebola outbreak. They applied proven techniques learned from polio to stop the outbreak. The incident command system was familiar to polio workers. The deputy director of the polio EOC was sent to Lagos to lead the Ebola response. And the quality of polio eradication activities did not suffer. This was a critical legacy of polio eradication in action, and it saved lives in Nigeria by stopping the outbreak. Many of the strategies and techniques that Nigeria implemented to get where it is today are being adapted by Pakistan, which today accounts for 85% of the world's polio cases. To get over the finish line in Pakistan, we need the support of every sector of society, from high visibility leadership by the Prime Minister and provincial governors, to the establishment of emergency operation centers to focus vaccination efforts, intensified efforts to reach mobile and nomadic populations, and leveraging support from other partners such as the UAE. Afghanistan has made remarkable progress against polio, but continues to have the virus reintroduced from Pakistan. Pakistan will need to match the effort we've seen in Nigeria if 2015 is to be the year when we see the final case of polio. In the coming year, 85 countries have made plans to introduce inactivated polio vaccine and will begin the eventual phase-out of OPV, or oral polio vaccine. IPV is also being used now to address areas of ongoing transmission, and it's clear that IPV and OPV are complementary and potentially synergistic tools. We would not have reached this point without the dedication and partnership of Rotarians across the globe, leading the fight to eradicate polio for nearly 30 years. Thank you, and Rotary International, for all you've done and continue to do, as together we finish the job of eradicating polio.
As Dr. Frieden made clear, information is one of the most important tools any society has in the prevention of disease. During the 1916 polio epidemic in New York City, a rumor went around that cats were carriers of the virus. And so in the course of a single summer, more than 90,000 cats were rounded up and killed in the city. Meantime, simple protocols like learning the symptoms of the disease and how to contain it went ignored. In the interest of making the best use of the knowledge weapon, we're fortunate to have with us Dr. Jim Alexander, a senior epidemiologist at the CDC and a commissioned officer in the U.S. Public Health Service, to answer some of the questions we all have about polio. Dr. Alexander? Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege to take part in this second World Polio Day program and to follow Dr. Frieden in speaking with you. As John Hugo said a little bit earlier, 3 decades ago, Rotary had the audacity to challenge the global community to eradicate polio as a gift to future generations of children. It has been this audacity of hope, of caring, and of commitment that has helped sustain the polio eradication initiative. In 1988, at the beginning of the initiative, while poliovirus was endemic in 125 countries on 5 continents, paralyzing approximately 1,000 children every day and resulting in over 350,000 total cases of polio each year. This year, 2014, while polio is endemic in only 3 countries, Nigeria in Africa and Pakistan and Afghanistan in Asia, and only 6 other countries have ongoing polio outbreaks. Fewer than 250 cases have been reported globally so far this year, which is a 99% reduction in cases since the beginning of the initiative. Important progress has been made in polio eradication this year. The Southeast Asia region, which includes India and Indonesia, was certified polio-free in March. As Dr. Fantastic, fantastic. And as Dr. Frieden noted, 80% of the world's population now lives in polio-free areas. Nearly 2 years have passed since the last case of wild poliovirus type 3 was detected, suggesting that it might have been eradicated, as was the case with type 2 poliovirus previously. It seems that only polio type 1 remains. This year, outbreaks in the Horn of Africa, the Middle East, and Central Africa are coming under control, with fewer cases in 2014 than in 2013. But efforts in Africa need to be enhanced. My numbers are a little bit updated from what Dr. Frieden shared with you, but using these numbers, the total number of global polio cases so far this year is now 247, compared with 298 for the same period last year. We are making progress toward a polio-free Africa, but as Dr. Frieden noted, Pakistan accounts for 85% of the global cases of polio this year and has exported poliovirus to Afghanistan and the Middle East. Most polio cases in Pakistan have occurred in the mountainous northwestern part of the country, but poliovirus has been found everywhere in the country, among polio cases in sewage samples and elsewhere. Recent military operations in the tribal areas have opened previously inaccessible areas, creating a window of opportunity for vaccination, but the program faces a number of challenges. To get over the finish line and eradicate polio, Pakistan needs greater national commitment and involvement of regional partners such as the UAE. It needs to strengthen its emergency operations at the national, provincial, and district levels, as has been done in Nigeria. It needs to continue its use of innovative strategies to reach children in those insecure and conflict-affected areas. And it needs to have a surge in vaccination campaigns this winter during the poliovirus low season. As Dr. Frieden noted, Afghanistan has made very good progress against polio during the last 2 years with implementation of its emergency action plan. In 2014, most cases of polio type 1 in Afghanistan have resulted from importation of virus from Pakistan. To ensure that Afghanistan moves forward, there needs to be engagement of the new national leadership just recently elected, an intensified focus on those children missed during campaigns, and efforts to close surveillance gaps where polio cases are being missed, especially in the South. Nigeria is in a very good position to stop wild polio circulation this year. Only 6 cases from 2 states have been reported so far, in contrast to the cases that have been seen in the last 2 years. The last case was seen in July in a rural area of Kano State in the northern middle of the country. Nigeria has gotten this close to eradicating polio by a remarkable turnaround of the program in the last 2 years, implementing that emergency operations center as described, developing a very proactive approach to eradication, finding innovative ways to reach children in those insecure areas where Boko Haram and others operate, and identifying ways to find and reach children that are just missed during campaigns. This turnaround and the country ownership of the program are due to the commitment of the Nigerian government and the efforts of Rotarians, polio survivors in the country, and Nigerian philanthropists. In Nigeria, the Polio Emergency Operations Center also allowed the country to respond quickly and effectively to the Ebola outbreak. As Dr. Frieden mentioned, the deputy director of the polio EOC was sent to Lagos in the south of Nigeria to lead the response, and several key deputies went with him, and national polio program staff were also sent to run its operations. As you can see in the bottom of the picture, they opened an Ebola treatment unit which was staffed 24/7. They recruited physicians who were reluctant, but they got them to volunteer and work in the treatment unit. And as you see in the other picture, they conducted contact tracing with up to 500 contacts per day. And they saved lives by stopping the outbreak. And in spite of these intense efforts, polio activities did not suffer. As Dr. Frieden noted, this is the legacy of polio eradication in action. An important new tactic has been introduced this year in the fight against polio. In May, polio was declared a public health emergency of international concern, with the design to reduce the threat of polio outbreaks from importations from countries like Pakistan. Now, international health regulations, or IHR, recommend that these polio exporting countries, such as Pakistan, should vaccinate all travelers with polio vaccine before they travel to other countries. As part of the end game of polio eradication, inactivated polio vaccine, IPV, also known as the Salk vaccine, will be introduced into routine immunization programs in all countries as a complementary tool to oral polio vaccine. to boost protection against polioviruses, to stop outbreaks, and to accelerate eradication. In this graph, in this map, the countries that are shown in orange have already introduced IPV into their programs. And 85 more countries, shown in blue, intend to introduce IPV into their programs during 2015. If the current progress continues, we should soon see polio kicked out of Nigeria and all of Africa, the recent outbreaks stopped, and the international spread of polioviruses interrupted. Intensified efforts can and will be made to help Pakistan cross the finish line. We are indeed this close, and closer than ever, to polio eradication. Ending polio will be one of the world's great public health achievements, preventing lifelong paralysis for children and saving billions of dollars over the next 2 decades, and leaving a legacy of strong immunization and public health programs in the poorest parts of the world. I can only echo Dr. Frieden's sentiments. We would not have reached this point without the dedication of Rotary and our other partners around the world. So on behalf of the children of the world, thank you for all that you have done and continue to do. Together, we will finish the job of eradicating polio. Thank you.
I'm bringing this out because if you see the two of us standing next to each other, I will be his Jiminy Cricket. So you don't want to see that. I wanted to ask a couple of questions that have occurred to me, and I think maybe occurring to a couple of other, number of other people. One of those questions is, if information is a tool, misinformation is a weapon. Now, we hear a lot about the misinformation campaigns against polio. We hear it in the US with the fringe groups still talking about the fiction that vaccines are related to autism. We hear it in Pakistan, where in the tribal regions they're told that the polio vaccine carries HIV and is designed to sterilize Muslim girls. It's just a faction that, most people aren't saying this, but how do we deal with that? How do we control that kind of misinformation that's making this fight harder than it needs to be?
You are so right that communications is a key element of any vaccination program, whether it's in the United States, whether it's abroad, whether it's polio eradication or anything else. One of the key strategies that has been used, I think, in the polio eradication initiative to overcome this is the engagement of leaders and respected people within the communities where those rumors are circulating, where that misinformation is circulating. And those leaders who have the trust of the communities and can convince them. In some cases, it has to do with an imam, whether it's in Nigeria or from Saudi Arabia, issuing a fatwa or a religious decree that polio vaccine is safe and this program is in the interest of Muslims everywhere, whether it's political leaders or tribal leaders or others. So that's one big avenue and a key avenue for fighting this misinformation.
And we have one of our reporters at Time Magazine, Erin Baker, was on the ground in Pakistan exploring that, and she was struck by exactly that idea, that no matter how rabid the belief is in the stories that are told about vaccines, once a person with that profound moral authority, like an imam, can come in and say, this is endorsed. One of the Quran's great teachings is take care of the babies. And that's a much more important imperative than trafficking in misinformation. The other question, and this is a little more technical, is You spoke of 3 different strains of polio, and we're now ticking them off one by one. Well, polio in some cases is polio, and paralysis is paralysis. So why does it make a difference that we are slowly ticking off the strains and down to 1 truly dangerous wild strain as opposed to 3?
Yeah, I don't know if at the time of polio eradication, Rotarians knew that they were taking on 3 viruses instead of 1. I don't think that would have swayed them. I think they would have said, that's okay, let's go for it. Let's do it. That's what I think. But there are indeed, way back when in the 40s, when they were first actually identifying viruses and discovering, through looking at antibodies from persons who had had paralysis, that there looked like there were different viruses. Right. So they determined way back when there are actually 3 separate viruses. And indeed, type 1 is the one that's most frequently associated with outbreaks. Mm-hmm. Type 2 is the one that grows the best and spreads most easily among populations. And then type 3 tends to be a little weaker, does not transmit quite so well. So in places where polioviruses can flourish, can easily be transmitted from one person to the next, you used to be able to see all 3 types. And even within a type, you would see little strains or breeds, you might say, of poliovirus. And so one reflection of the impact of polio eradication is the reduction in the 3 types down to hopefully 1. And even within the type 1, the reduction of the number of strains of type 1 that are circulating. So that indicates that the programs, the vaccination program, the population immunity is pushing the virus, and only the few hardy ones that can hit and run can still survive. So.
And we will get that last one.
We will get that last one.
Dr. Alexander, I want to thank you so much for being here and for making us all smarter. Now I can stand with confidence again. Nobody pretends that the folks at Rotary can do it all alone, and we owe a debt of thanks to the partners in the fight. Among those partners are the people of the CDC, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. These are people, men and women, who wake up every morning committed to the straightforward, powerful work of saving the lives of children. There could be no more remarkable job in the world. And for a look at how those jobs get done, let's take a moment to hear from the Rotarians on the front lines in the 3 countries in the world, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and Nigeria, in which polio does remain a mortal threat.
The wild polio virus remains endemic in only 3 countries. In Nigeria, Rotary and its partners have made big gains despite insecurity in the northeast.
We have teams that are standing by, and they will be mobilized to go into those areas and immunize all children below the age of 5 and get out. We are optimistic that by the end of this year we should see our last case, and we're working towards that.
In Afghanistan, the partners are holding the line against local cases. The small increase is the result of refugees fleeing Pakistan.
Afghanistan is in a strong position to eradicate polio. The majority of the cases in the country, they are imported. There are matches with the cases in Pakistan.
Across the border, in Pakistan, militants have killed vaccinators and banned immunization in some areas. This has caused a spike in polio cases.
North Waziristan was under the control of Taliban. We had 300,000 children trapped there. So this year, if you see in the 6 months, the cases which have come out are all from North Waziristan or the surrounding areas in KPK.
In June, Pakistan began an offensive to retake the contested areas.
Now we have got an opportunity to give the polio drops to those children who did not get for 3.5 years.
Despite the dangers in all 3 countries, the vaccination teams are unstoppable.
When you visit the vaccinators who are working in very difficult circumstances, you would salute them. They are the real heroes of the program.
The vaccinators who have lost a sister or a brother, they want to continue the mission because they say that my brother who died has left a mission incomplete.
In Nigeria, Afghanistan and Pakistan, Rotary and its partners are keeping their promise to eradicate polio.
I'm 100% sure that we could win this battle.
We have the will, the desire. Our government is committed. We will overcome these problems and we will eradicate polio from Pakistan.
This is the greatest, public-private partnership project ever. So much sacrifice has been made right from the beginning to get to this point, and we need to ensure that we get the rest of the job done.
Edward Jenner had it easy. The 18th century British physician who developed the first smallpox vaccine ran something of a home brew operation. He would mix up his antigens by hand and deliver them person to person, patient to patient, one by one, until he had protected a community. That's not so easy when you have to produce enough vaccines to take care of billions of children around the world, when you need cold chains and delivery routes and sterile conditions and absolutely rigorous quality control. And so we have to rely on global pharmaceutical companies to take on that enormous job. One of those companies is Sanofi Pasteur, the world's largest manufacturer of the oral polio vaccine and the leader in preparing for the changeover to the injectable or inactivated vaccine. With us this evening is Laura Laughlin, Associate Vice President of Vaccine Policy at Sanofi Pasteur. Ms. Laughlin?
Thank you. Thank you very much for this welcome from those in Chicago and those around the world. Actually, it's a bit like coming home for me because I herald from a small town about 100 miles from here. And I'm proud to say that my grandfather was a very long-standing and active Rotarian. Thank you. Sanofi Pasteur harkens back, actually, to the very origins of vaccines and vaccination, and all the way back to Louis Pasteur. This is a legacy which we carry. It brings us both an honor and a responsibility, and that inspires us each day still in what we do. At Sanofi Pasteur, polio and polio prevention is really part of our DNA. And that means all the way back to the groundbreaking work of vaccine pioneers, which were Charles Mérieux and Jonas Salk, who worked together to arrive at the production scale-up in large quantities of the inactivated polio vaccine, which will now be used as part of the Objective 2 requirements to get to the end of the game with polio eradication. Sanofi Pasteur and Rotary share this very strong commitment to polio eradication and to saving children and their families from the devastating effects of this disease. We are very humbled. We've been partners from the beginning, and we're very humbled by the energy and the massive reach that Rotarians contribute as they take our vaccines from the laboratory through the manufacturing facilities to these children in so many countries in need in the world, in our joint goal to eradicate polio. So we're delighted to be here, we're delighted to be together, and I'm very pleased to introduce Olivier Charmet, who is our CEO and president of Sanofi Pasteur, And though he couldn't be here, he wanted to share his enthusiasm and a special message for you. Thank you.
Dear friends, we at Sanofi Pasteur celebrate and appreciate this opportunity to stand side by side with you, Rotarians, on World Polio Day. While I may not be personally with you in Evanston today, I'm delighted to share this message with you. This year, World Polio Day is particularly noteworthy because this year is an exceptional year. We are beginning the last chapter on polio eradication. I was in Nepal a few weeks ago, and what I saw made me incredibly happy and proud. Nepal was spearheading a group of more than 120 countries that will introduce IPV in routine immunization in the coming months. At Sanofi Pasteur, we have had a long-term vision of IPV as the ultimate health tool able to finish the job started with oral polio vaccines. Like you, we have been involved in polio eradication for decades. Providing vaccines to make this possible embodies our vision as an organization. It is something that inspires every one of us at Sanofi Pasteur in our day-to-day activities. Today, we are honored to stand alongside Rotary, their historical partner in the battle against polio. You, the women and men of Rotary all over the world, have demonstrated grassroots engagement to achieve successful vaccination campaigns with oral vaccines. You remain committed despite the many challenges. Your example shows us what public-private partnerships can achieve. We have now entered phase 2 of the World Health Organization Endgame strategy. I look forward to the day we can stand together alongside the international partners, the WHO, UNICEF, Gavi, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the CDC, with the world's children and their families to celebrate together the eradication of polio. In the meantime, enjoy this very special moment.
If it's true that we are this close to eradicating polio, and we are, the question is, how can we close that gap? Logicians like to talk about the thought experiment known as Zeno's paradox. Zeno, a Greek philosopher from the 5th century BC, argued that it's never possible to complete the last mile in any journey, because first you have to complete the last half mile. Then you must complete half of the half mile that remains, then half of the quarter that remains, then the eighth, and on infinitely. But epidemiology isn't a paradox. It's a hard science of hunting and vaccinating and counting cases until the number inevitably goes from 1 to 0. Victory in the fight against polio really is within reach. The final mile, honestly, is just 5,280 feet. It's 63,360 inches, and foot by foot, inch by inch, baby by baby, vaccine by vaccine, brave people will walk it together. One of those people is our next guest, and this is the part of the evening when people stop paying attention to the fact that I'm on stage at all, because that guest is Tessanne Chin. Tessanne is the winner of Season 5 of The Voice. She's opened for Patti LaBelle, Peebo Bryce, and Gladys Knight, and toured with Jimmy Cliff. What you may not know about her is her quieter work. She co-headlined Shaggy's benefit concert for Bustamante Children's Hospital in Kingston, Jamaica. She headlined the Food for the Poor organization in 2014. She's worked to fight lupus, juvenile diabetes, and HIV/AIDS. She is that rare star whose philanthropy section is 4 times longer than her celebrity section on her Wikipedia page. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tessanne Chin. Before Tess-Ann performs, we want to have a chance to ask her just a few questions. Okay. And the one that's most on my mind is why polio? There's so many other causes in the world. You've battled so many of them yourself. Why is polio winning your attention now?
Well, the first time I heard about polio was in Kingston from our Rotary Club. And when I found out that it was actually preventable, I was like, what? So why is this still happening, you know? And I think for me, if there's a way to raise awareness, and I believe music is a wonderful way to do that. It's a wonderful tool to be able to bring attention to a cause, and I'd like to be part of that cause. So when I have babies one day, that this is one less thing that we have to worry about.
And what is it then that people hear, that people watching our live stream, that anyone who cares about this issue, what can they do to make a difference?
Well, I think just, you know, make yourself aware of it. I got a chance to kind of read up on, you know, how it affects people in terms of, you know, not being able to get a vaccination or not knowing about it. For me, I just didn't know. I didn't know that, you know, you hear people talk about certain things, but you don't know the real facts about it. So just get educated, visit the websites and see how you can make a difference. And I'm sure there's a way for people to be able to make a donation, to be able to help, you know, people to continue to give those vaccinations all over the world.
And when the message comes from someone like you, it really is more powerful than when it comes from a lot of other folks. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you for having us.
What I want to do now is try to get across that sometimes the way to get people to pitch in and do this kind of work is to show them why their work can make a difference. And few things make that case more strongly than Rotary's This Close campaign, which is being seen on billboards, TV screens, and computers across the world. I want to close my portion of this evening with a look at that remarkable campaign and then leave the stage to Tess-Ann. Thank you very much.
We're this close.
This close to making history.
This close.
We are this close.
We are this close.
This close.
This close to changing the world. We are this close to making sure no child suffers a crippling disease ever again.
We are this close to making history.
We are this close to ending polio.
This close to ending polio.
We're this close.
This close.
This close to ending polio.
This close.
We are this close to ending polio.
All we need is you.
All we need is you. All we need is you.
Is you.
We are this close. This close.
If we don't act now, we may lose this chance forever. Help Rotary make history at endpolionow.org.
Hello, everyone. This is my band. We came all the way from Jamaica for this tonight. And this, thank you. And this next song, I thought it was a very appropriate song. It's called Always Tomorrow. And the sentiment behind this song is that no matter what we face, no matter what hardships we may be going through, there's always tomorrow to have a better day and to try to get it right. And hopefully, polio will be a thing of the past and tomorrow will be brighter, yes? So I hope you guys enjoy this. I'm gonna need your help. Hey! Yeah, yeah! Oh. Ooh. When the silence is dangerous and there's no one to trust, when you're caught between the rock and the rage, it's time to turn the page. You find yourself in the midst of the struggle, and soon enough you'll emerge from the rubble, stronger than ever. Just hold it together. I know when the rain starts falling, hold your head up high, and don't you cry. You'll be fine, 'cause there's always tomorrow. When the rain starts falling and the sun don't shine, don't you cry. I'm on your side, 'cause there's always tomorrow. you're never alone. There's no need to face this all on your own, 'cause we're stronger together, withstand any weather. I know when the rain starts falling, hold your head up high, and don't you cry, you'll be fine, 'cause there's always tomorrow. When the rain starts falling and the sun don't shine, don't you cry, I'm on your side, 'cause there's always tomorrow. Oh, 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 'cause there's always tomorrow. When you feel like it's too much to swallow, down on your luck, good times they will follow. Believe me when I say there's always tomorrow. When the rain starts falling, hold your head up high, and don't you cry, you'll be fine. When the rain starts falling and the sun don't shine, oh darling, don't you cry, I'm on your side, 'cause there's always tomorrow. There's always tomorrow. Always tomorrow. Yeah, 'cause there's always tomorrow. 'Cause there's always tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Kessan and the band. Wasn't that wonderful? Just terrific. We especially appreciate her passion and her commitment to this campaign to rid the world of polio. Thank you again. You don't have to be a doctor or a public health nurse or a full-time humanitarian to fight polio. Polio eradication isn't reserved for the experts by any means. Anyone who cares about the health and well-being of children is fully credentialed to become a part of history as we enter the end game phase of our campaign to end polio. If you've watched tonight's program, I hope that you, first, have learned something new about polio and the polio eradication effort, and that you are inspired and wanting to know how you can support the eradication campaign. And it's really easy to get involved. For one thing, we need you to voice your support. Of the more than 11 billion invested, in polio eradication so far, most of it, $9 billion, has come from governments. So please, use your voice. Send an email, tweet, post on Facebook, even write a letter to let your government leaders know you strongly support the allocation of public resources to protect children from polio. Share the same message with your own friends and followers on social media. Share the link to tonight's program, which will be available for later viewing. And remember that governments cannot do it alone. We welcome funding from all sources: businesses, charities, individuals. Earlier in the program, I mentioned a unique funding arrangement between Rotary and the Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation is matching 2-to-1 every dollar that Rotary commits to polio eradication, up to $35 million a year. That means every dollar works 3 times as hard. So please, visit our website, endpolionow.org, to find out how you can support the cause. And don't forget, another valuable resource about polio, right in your own communities across the world, your local Rotary Club. Remember that the eradication of polio is Rotary's top priority as an organization. That's why today, on World Polio Day, Rotary clubs worldwide are holding public viewing parties for tonight's program, hosting open houses, reaching out to the news media, and other high-profile activities to raise awareness about polio eradication. Today, for instance, in Pakistan, Rotarians went to a school to teach the children there about the needs to do polio immunizations. The president of Pakistan actually immunized children today on this World Polio Day. That's what Rotary does. That's what our partners do as well. So check in with your local Rotary club to see what they are doing in support of polio eradication and how you can get involved right in your own community in this global health initiative. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for participating tonight, both here in Chicago and across the world. And remember, together, we can all end polio. Good night, everyone.
Hey, sister, the emotions have gone cold, and the part of